that work
There
for
it
you?
is. Yeah, I mean, as much as a visual of you magnified on my screen is going to work for me.
Wow, that's an unnecessarily harsh place to start.
Sorry, dude. Little testy this morning. It's early.
Oh, it is. It is. Where are you?
Dalat. We're in like kind of I don't know. It's like an elevated region of Vietnam. It's like about I don't know. It's an hour plane ride out of Ho Chi Minh, so it's kind of like Melbourne to Adelaide, but it's higher in elevation, so it's actually a lot colder here.
Oh.
It's been a nice change.
Wearing a cap.
Oh,
It says
you don't like it?
Colorado.
Yeah, I'm a hat guy now.
Are you a hat guy?
Yeah, well, I've become a hat guy recently.
Is
A
it
lot of
'cause you're
changes have
outside
happened.
a lot?
No, it was actually because so if you really want to get into it, it's because I haven't showered yet.
Oh,
Which
God.
might be I know it might be a first. I've been up for hours, but I've been wearing this hat because we've got a big day ahead.
Okay.
So I had to squeeze in the pod. As you know, I'm 6 hours behind you.
Yeah.
I have to do a pod. I have to go to the gym after. So I thought if I'm going to the gym after, I best shower after the gym.
Makes sense, yeah.
And they've got, so it just means that I've got bad hair. You want to see this? You
Oh,
wanna see that?
oh, fuck. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Michael, put that back on, please.
Exactly.
Please.
Exactly. So I did that for you.
Is it fixed?
I put it back on. I put the hat back on.
Okay. Sorry, you need to give a guy some warning when you do that.
But Nick, my point is that sometimes you don't know what's best for you.
Yeah. I've learnt a lesson here today. Man,
Just trust me.
don't
just trust
question Michael's Colorado hat choices, even if it does seem slightly too big. Just a little bit
Now
too
that-
big.
Look, I'm a bit self-conscious about it. I just decided on a whim.
You're a bit self-conscious about your 10 a.m. wearing a baseball cap while recording a podcast energy.
No, I've just never been a hat guy, and famously,
Big head.
I have a
Huge
small head. I have a small head, so no hats work for me because whenever I put on a hat, I look like a Make-A-Wish kid because it just even the small hats just hang a little bit too large on the side.
Okay.
And then I found this hat. We were in an op shop in Dalat.
Yeah.
And I found this hat, and it just seemed to fit really well, even though you said it's a bit too big. But I thought it looked good. Okay.
I have a
And-
theory that's coming together now that no hat fits any people because all the people I know have problems with hats. My friend Adam, huge head, gigantic head, more is past 5 head. He's into the 6 and 7s. It's
Big ego
absurd,
too.
and cannot find a hat or a helmet or anything to save himself. Sean,
Yes.
our friend Sean, his handle, his online personality is Dr. Ears. He has some hat related issues, right? Here you are on the other end of the spectrum, too small for hats. Who are they making hats for? Is there anyone that this suits? Because when I put on a hat, I'm going to be honest, I don't feel like it's perfect for me either. What are we doing here?
It's a real identity shift. It's kind of like not wearing glasses your whole life, and then you all of a sudden wearing glasses. You have to get used to it. It's a big
Yeah.
change. For
I
your
mean,
self-perception.
I can see you, personality-wise, suiting a baseball cap. I think this works for you conceptually, like on paper. My point is, I just don't feel like hats fit anyone. Who can walk into a store, pick up a hat off the shelf, at the hat store, put it on, and be like, perfect, I'm a size M, and here's my M-sized head, and it all works. I don't think they've got this right.
No, I think now that you say it, it might be right. This is a real roundabout evisceration of a style choice that I've made today, by the way. It's just like, no, it's not just you. It's everyone has a problem wearing hats.
Well,
So
because then
I
you end up
appreciate
in
you kind of-
territory where you have the adjustable width, right? Like you're like that cloth strip that slides through like a watch buckle, or you've got the very 90s like little plastic clip through, you know what I'm talking about. None of those people aren't
trucker
looking
hat.
for that sort of aesthetic these days, but I feel like they've just given up on trying to make them fit then.
Yeah, I mean, well, the best hat ever worn was by Daniel Day-Lewis in There'll Be Blood. That is the greatest hat I've ever seen on a man or a
Okay.
woman. But,
I
it's just the best.
I only have one counter argument. Have you seen those hats where you can put 2 cans of beer in and there's a straw that you can drink on it and the beer's in your head?
Yep, I have seen those. Why?
I just think that we've got a contender here for best hat of all time that you've glossed over in your
Yeah, no,
adoration for There Will Be Blood.
a functional hat is better than a broad brim, 1910s hat, I guess. Well, Nick, this is pretty what's the word, fortuitous? I don't know. But my point is there's been a lot of changes.
Yeah.
Now I'm a hat guy. Now we've established I'm a hat guy.
Yeah.
Now I'm an engaged guy, as we discussed a few weeks ago.
Getting a little bit
But
tired of hearing this, but yep.
This might be the biggest change.
Okay.
And it's going to sound weird coming out of my mouth, but I'm also a bar soap guy now. Yeah. Bar soap. I've moved from shower, what is it called? Shower gel to body wash to bar soap. And I take some time. Take some time to process that. I sure did.
This is not the way I expected to find out that the podcast was ending.
Wow. Okay. Took it worse than I thought.
A bar soap guy.
Yeah.
I don't know that I can deal with so many changes in your life all at once.
Well,
I mean, since day one, do you remember when we met, where we met? The very first time? It was at the Academy Cinema on that orientation day for Wallace. And do you remember the first thing you said to me?
No.
You said, "Hi, I'm Michael, and I love pumping a body wash." And that was the first thing you said to me. And from that first moment, I've always thought of you as a body wash kind of guy. And in fact, it's sort of one of the core tenets of, I think, our friendship is understanding that in you, as in me, is this innate appreciation for the flexibility, the fun, the frivolity of a hand-lathered body wash experience. Mm. And to be honest, I'm a little bit hurt that you're just going to spring this kind of immense change on me without even forewarning that you were thinking of trying something new. I mean, Jesus, does all these years of friendship mean nothing?
Yeah. I didn't realize that was the first thing I said to you. That's a strange thing.
You said you walked up to me with your hands in your pockets and you said, "I'm a Johnson & Johnson boy, baby."
And your first thought was, okay.
Yeah. I thought,
okay.
Here's
this is
someone,
a shower gel guy.
Here's someone I can start a podcast with.
Well, bar soap, okay, so let me explain a little bit. Bar soap, I've always been opposed to. We had bar soap growing up. I don't know about you, but our family all used a bar soap. And they were that was my first encountering of pubes. And they weren't mine, and they weren't my brother's, and they weren't my sister's.
Why is that any better? Why would you prefer a sibling pube to a parent pube?
I don't know, but I remember the first time because there's hair on it. Growing up when I was using the soap, there's some hair on the soap. That's just what you do. But then when I hit puberty, I realized what kind of hair it was. Yeah, and then I was like, oh my God! And then since then I've been disgusted by it. Mm-hmm. But now because we've been on the road for so long, I have sensitive skin. Okay, I'm just going to say it. I have sensitive skin, and not all soaps agree with me. Yeah, and I can get a little very dry, very even peeling. Little eczema adjacent. I would describe it. And so, Exegesis. And so I picked up this bar soap because, it's easy to carry. It comes with a little holder. It's soap-free soap, so it's made with goat's milk. Beautiful, beautiful
What's it
stuff.
taste like?
Well, I haven't. Lauren hasn't had to use it on me yet because I've been on my best behavior. But this stuff, it's like washing yourself with God's cum. It's like a ball of God's jizz, and you're just rubbing it all over. And my skin's never been better. I can take it on the road. It's kind of compact. Put it in my toiletries. And, I've only got one other person using it, and she's relatively clean.
Oh, good.
And there's been no pubes on the soap. So I think I'm converted.
Wow.
Yeah. Sorry.
So you said you had a fairly packed day. Should we...
No good?
Just wondering if we should maybe get this. You know what? Yeah, let's do it. Welcome to Deep Thought, everybody. This is a podcast that really defies explanation. But, despite our best efforts, it's still here 10 years on. Sitting through the internet with me, my friend Michael. Hello. How are we doing?
Hello and apologies.
And I am Nick. Lovely to be here. Lovely to be back with you. Good to see you. Looking clean-ish. Looking swole. How's the life treating you?
Oh boy, life is good. Life is very good. What can I say about this? We're just losing socks out, left, right, and center. Nick, we're getting our laundry done at laundromats, mum and pop stores, and I have lost about 17 individual socks in the last 2 months, so I've had to buy some new ones. It's all good. You don't complain. It's a tough thing because you're negotiating with a with a language barrier.
Yeah.
Often you're going into kind of the laundromat down the road. Laundromat. It's just kind of a cafe. I'm doing inverted commas
here
with my hands for the listeners. And it's just like a kind of an old lady and an old man, and like fairly blasé. So you give your laundry over, knowing that you might get 75% of it back, and that's a win.
So there aren't laundromats that you can do yourself. It's like let's leave this in someone else's care.
No, not where we are. We're in a kind of it's kind of like almost like a big village. That might be a bit too strong, but it's it's a very small
and suburban sort of, yeah.
Yes, and kind of tradition. It's also quite modern as well. I don't want to say that it's got kind of like a interesting youth culture. I would highly recommend, if anyone ever comes to Vietnam, go to Dalat, because it's a very cool place. We're here for another 2 days. We're leaving tomorrow to go to like some farm. We're doing like a little farm stay for 2 nights.
Nice.
And then we are off to another beachside place in Vietnam. But yeah, life is good. This is a bit of a peeve, a bit of a myth right off the bat. But we don't need to do the jingle.
Well, I have one myth as well. So if we're both miffing, let's just sort of start up front. Michael's myth, annoyed, displeased, riled up, offended, aggrieved, irritated, chagrined, pissed off, put out, resentful, and peaked. Michael's myth.
So we've taken a lot of planes lately, and there's a certain etiquette on planes, as I'm sure you're conscious of every time you fly.
Mm-hmm.
But I cannot get over this when people stand up, right? So the plane's landed, and you're waiting to disembark the plane, and people immediately get up. So that's, whatever, that's fine. I judge you. If you immediately get up as soon as the plane has stopped, I judge you. Like,
Are we talking pre-ding? We're talking pre-seatbelt ding.
Pre-ding.
Okay.
Pre-ding. People just immediately stand up. Okay, fine. But we've had this a few times where we're in row 12 and it's our turn to kind of, people are kind of getting off the plane. So the line's moving off the plane gradually. And we're trying to get our bags from the overhead compartment, and people from row 13 back are just pushing forward, not giving you a break. So where do you stand on this? What's the etiquette?
When you say pushing forward, are you saying cutting past you, or are you saying like keeping the flow of traffic moving such that you can't get your bag out?
What I'm saying is the etiquette is whoever's in front of you, even if you're standing up, whoever's in front of you on the plane, you let the other person stand up, grab their overhead luggage, and then leave.
You file out from the front row, all of the front row, then all of the second row, then all of the third row, all of the fourth row. It's not whoever's in the corridor, in the aisle, gets to clear all the way through from row 30, and then your second wave comes in from the side. No, it's front first.
Exactly. So obvious. But this is just behavior that I just find deeply unacceptable. People, it's so funny because I can't remember which comedian has that bit, but it's like people are so, when you're waiting at the gate to get on the plane, people are just like can't wait to get on the plane. They want to be first in line to get on the plane. Then they want to be first in line to get off the plane. It's just like constantly trying to be the first to get on and get off.
Yeah.
And in Asia, like in Japan, it's a completely different story. And I'll even throw Korea in there, where there's like this etiquette where people are very aware of their personal space or their personal, how they are imposing on other people. They'll move to one side on an escalator, for example. Yeah. But not to paint with a broad brush here, but the Chinese and the Vietnamese are... They do not have that at all. It's just, you take a little bit, when you're in a foreign country, you're like, okay, I'm a guest here wherever I am. Yeah. But at a certain point, when you've taken as many planes as we have in the last, 6 months, it's just like, come on.
It's interesting because I read somewhere recently that even in Western countries, there's a bit of a shake-up to this policy happening in sort of the Zoomer generation and younger, like young people coming up. They will get up and they will walk all the way to the front of the plane, regardless of which row they were at, and just be well, I'm going to get up and like, if no one else cares, why are we standing around? I'm just going to walk all the way to the front, which is pure like chaos energy, and questioning chaos. the long established rhythms that we've just discussed. But yeah, they're just like, well, fuck it, like, why can't I go up to the front if I want to get off first? Why can't I just walk forward?
Well, they don't want to. That's not a long-term plan for the Zoomers. They're making a bad name for their whole generation. Where do you stand on the airplane seat reclining?
Well, you shouldn't stand on the seat.
Nice.
I think that reclining is totally valid. But I think reclining is built into as a function of the seat, and if you want to recline. I think really this is one of those class warfare things where they're trying to get you to turn on your fellow citizen when really the attention should be on the airlines themselves, who have crunched up seats so close to each other to fit more people onto these carriers that there's no longer the expectation that you have any leg room at all. And so there's this like sort of, oh, how dare you like even inclined like fucking 12 degrees to make your piece of shit seat even slightly comfortable. Yeah. When really they should just like have a legroom of 100 centimeters instead of like 75, so that everyone feels like they still have a bit of space and can incline without inconveniencing the people behind them. Yeah, fuck the patriarchy, overthrow capitalism, let's ruin...
the planetriarchy. But I think that's a good point. Like they're turning us, they're making us turn on each other when we should be revolting against them.
I agree. Yeah.
But I think, this is like classic, news.com.au shit that flares up every 3 months. Yeah. You're like, where do you give a thumbs up if you think you can recline, on a love heart if you think it's poor form. But like, I do think there is like, especially if there's a tall if you were behind me and I wanted to recline, first of all, I'm not the type to recline. I would never recline. I'm too much of a nice guy, I guess. Don't say anything. But I think I would maybe ask if it's okay. If I
Oh
if
no,
I was
never
desperate.
ask. Never ask. Because if you ask, you open yourself up to having to agree with a no if they say no. If you want to recline, just recline, and that's life. You know, sometimes we are the reclinee and sometimes we are the recliner.
I think if there was someone reclining in front of me, I mean, I wouldn't say anything. I certainly wouldn't like kick up a fuss that would be filmed and put on social media.
No.
But I would, if I was with Lauren, I'd be like, oh, seeing this? Disgusting.
Yeah. That's, again, why the aisle seat is superior, because a recline doesn't affect you if you can stick your legs out into the aisle.
Do you ever pay for an extra row? Is that something you think about when you fly?
Occasion, yeah. I, until recently, had gold class on Air New Zealand, which was due to my work travel points having accrued, and just when they were about to expire, like I left work and like whitebait work when I was traveling lots for shooting things all over the country. I left that job in like 2017 and had just managed to like hold on by the skin of my teeth to enough points to that class for the years subsequent. And then it was about to expire and I was hundreds of points off. I was like, this is fucked. I'm losing all these privileges. And then COVID hit and New Zealand was like, okay, we're pausing all of the status things. We're going to extend it. And so I snuck like another good 2 years of that out of it, which was chef's kiss. Can you do a chef's kiss without the hands? Because it just felt like I kissed. Just air kissed then, but
yeah, that's okay. You can air kiss. Well, we've said it before, but thank God for COVID.
Thank God for COVID. But unfortunately, that has now expired, and as a result of that, I no longer get to pick the good seats at the front of the plane. And so when I was looking at it, I was like, oh well, I guess my best option is actually an escape row. An exit row. So I have started.
Escape row is a bit more dramatic, isn't it?
Yeah, the danger level feels a little bit more intense in the escape row.
It does feel it is a strange thing that, you know, especially if you are in the exit row. I know they do like the safety instructions on every flight for every person, but you're not really required necessarily to listen.
But like, if it's a real problem, I mean, I don't think there's any hope in them actually being of use.
Yeah, I mean that's what I think all the time. Whenever I'm in an exit row, they're like, "Can you pay attention to this? Because you have to do something if shit goes down." I'm like, I'm half drunk. Like I am not.
You'll still have 3 gin and tonics. Like it's not gonna be like you're kept there on, sorry, we don't supply alcohol to the exit row because if there's an emergency, we need you on your best wits. It's like, no, fucking, strap up, put your blanket over your legs, like fall asleep with your eye mask on and completely hammered. And yeah, just be ready to help in an emergency.
Yeah, I mean, that is bizarre to me. Like they basically run through a possible scenario of, catastrophe to you, and everyone's just like, okay,
yeah,
I'm just kind of listening to my podcast. Do you ever, tangent again, but do you ever have this thought that like often, I'll be like listening to music or listening to a podcast, and I think if something terrible happens to me, if just I'm walking down the street and I get hit by a car and I don't die instantly, and I'm listening to one of my stupid ass podcasts that are just about farts and dicks, and I'm just dying on the street while my headphones are just playing Tuesdays with Stories. I mean, I'll kill my. I mean, I think that about like, what about the song? What if I'm listening to a song? If I was listening to like,
I'm hearing
Reckoner,
a lot of, background.
Yeah.
What is that?
This is classic Vietnam. There are people just going down the streets on motorbikes and just on foot, and sometimes they'll have like one of those squeaky toys, and they'll just be beep, 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 like a rubber ducky. And basically, what they're doing is saying, "I've got this type of product. Does anyone want to buy it?" So they're kind of hawking.
Oh.
They're going down the street, and sometimes they'll be selling fruit.
I've got Tupperware. I've got fruit. I've got
Yeah, a lot of them have like gear parts for like motorbikes. Like, who wants to come get your gear parts? Like,
Yeah.
that's what they're doing. So
Wow.
we hear this, all day long. So sorry about that.
That's all right.
But yeah, back to what I was saying is that like if I was walking down the street listening to a Reckoner, I get hit by a bus. That's a pretty good song to go out to.
Yeah.
But if I'm listening to, and this, is probably more likely to happen in the festive season, my own Christmas song that I've been rendering out. I mean, that is the word. I'm just listening to a draft version of my Christmas song so I can hear the levels and I die to it.
Yeah. And people like pick up the earbuds and they're like they've just put the two fingers over your eyes to like, as you've collapsed on the side of the road, just so, close your eyes respectfully. And then there's this little tinny sort of, and they pick up the earpod and listen to your own voice singing your Christmas song. Yeah. It's going to
be... What kind of good Samaritan is just minutes after I die putting in the earbud that I was listening to? Like, I just want to get a sense. But also just like picking up my phone and then just like, is that him?
Yeah.
Seeing the artwork on the phone. I don't know.
Yeah, holding up the Face ID. Yeah.
I hope I die to something like dramatic and something I can like really, race up to heaven with.
Yeah. But not Stairway to Heaven, obviously. Too cliche.
Not Stairway. No, too cliche.
Well, you sort of teed me up for my own myth, which is also a transport-related courtesy one. And it's very
trans
simple.
Myth.
A trans... not sure about that.
Okay.
It's a classic. It may have come up on the podcast before. I can't remember. But God, this is a mega myth for me. I'm experiencing this more, and I think I'm developing road rage as a result. There is nothing more irritating to me when you are at a traffic light, at an intersection, waiting for a right turn arrow to go green, and the car in front of you is not paying attention, and the arrow goes green, and they don't start fucking moving. So by the time it's ready for you to go around the corner, it's already turned orange, and you have to stop again. Ugh! Nothing more infuriating.
So, okay, this is a bit of a mainstream myth, I'll say that. But
yeah.
But I mean, we can all relate to it. What do you do in that scenario? Do you do a little light tap on the horn?
I've become a horn person. I don't horn in
horn
like,
dog.
I'm a bit of a horn dog. I don't use it very frequently, but I will deploy the tactical, hey, get off your fucking phone, horn beep to try and get people to turn the corner. But here's my thing. My belief system, and this is how I treat every single light, regardless of whether I'm turning or progressing straight through the intersection. I am watching the cross lights in the opposite direction, the perpendicular lights, and I'm watching them, waiting for them to go green to orange to red. And by the time they're going red on the cross, I am accelerating to go green, because 1 second later that light is going and I'm awake, I'm ready to go, I'm moving forward. And to be honest, if you have not started moving within half a second of the light going green, you are an arsehole and you deserve to be killed.
You deserve to be killed. I totally agree with this. You want an idle roll.
An idle when just we're not breaking laws, we're not scooting ahead, into traffic or anything.
Just to let you know that I'm paying attention.
But you're
ready to go.
Ready. You are ready to go. Because sitting around for 2 seconds when the light is green, I'm sorry, get off the road.
Yes, no, that is despicable. I hate, the things that irk me the most in life are when people aren't paying attention and they aren't spatially aware of themselves.
Yeah,
in terms of
others.
If they like cut you off in the supermarket and they're like, oh yeah, I'm looking at the bananas, whatever. Like, just at least know that I am there and move to one side.
Yeah.
In terms of like driving a car, the thing that miffs me the most is when there's like a side, you're trying to turn down a side street
Yeah.
You're trying to indicate. You're in the left lane. You're trying to indicate, and then there's traffic stopped at a light, and people don't leave that break for you to go in, and then there's that thing where you obviously give them a death stare.
Yeah.
And you can feel that they can sense that you're staring at them, but then they're just trying to.
Yeah.
They're going, please just fucking turn green so I can get this guy to stop staring at me.
And
but they deserve
the corollary of that is when you are on the main road trying to turn into a side road, and the traffic is stopped, and all that needs to happen is the car in front of you needs to move like 30 centimeters forward so that you can go left to the slip lane and get around past them and into the side corner. And it's not like it's not like it would stop, turning traffic from getting in. You just need to be aware that there's a car behind you, clearly at a 45-degree angle, that just needs like 10 more centimeters, and you will be able to all get on with your lives, but they're just oblivious.
Yeah, and I think the reason why it gets me so angry is that I view it as selfish, and I wonder if it is. I wonder if it's selfish, or it's probably just obliviousness. But
it's oblivious.
I don't know how people get through to like 40, 50 years of life, and they just don't think about it. I just don't understand that. I learned that when I was 10.
Yeah. Be aware of where people are.
Beaten.
Yeah.
But I seriously do think that like it was instilled in me from my dad. Did you ever do this when you were like a young kid and you'd push the trolley and your dad would be, all right, you push the trolley and I'll walk ahead. And there were so many times where I'd push the trolley and I wasn't paying attention because I was daydreaming or looking at the Dunkaroos, callback. And I would like not ram, but like my dad would have stopped and I will hit the back of his leg with the trolley.
Oh.
He went fucking nuts. But I learned that my actions in society have consequences and affect other people.
Yeah. Yeah, important things to know.
Mm-hmm. Good tangent.
I also have some follow-up from last week. I watched the Hassan Minhaj video after we discussed last week the New Yorker article. And I thought, as you said, he did a very compelling job of explaining why this article was very slanted. I came away from it rather on his side about the whole affair. So, yeah,
same.
I don't have a great deal more to add to it because we did discuss it in depth last week, but it seemed like a bit of a hit job, that piece, and certainly one that misrepresented a bunch of things.
Yeah, and in terms of like defense videos, I mean, that's got to be, PR firms around the world are going to be taking note of that. I mean, like you said, you can just kind of let it blow over and stuff, or you can do what he did and kind of defend yourself. I guess it makes it easier when you've got like evidence.
Exactly.
But,
and I think
if you can present it in a way like that is concise and clear and also acknowledging where he did embellish and where there was truth in the article.
Yeah.
I mean, you're only going to come off better for it, I think.
I think it is still, though, a factor of his style and personality, though, because he has built an audience or a style of his own, which allows for deep dive and like fact presentation stuff. I don't know that I was about to give an example of like Tig Notaro doing a 20-minute like slideshow thing, but then my brain was like, well, I would still watch Tig Notaro do a presentation like that. But my point being that like he sort of has a built-in credibility when it comes to that form factor, which perhaps not everyone would suit doing a long deep dive video on. But yeah, I thought after the fact my opinion on the situation did evolve, so worth acknowledging.
Yeah, he needs to, I think, just as a visual thing, he just needs to stop using his hands. He gesticulates too much. It's off-putting. It's strange. He's like a praying mantis.
Okay, so just a little note there for you, Hassan. Something to take away.
Something to think about.
Yeah. Hey, listen. How do you feel about a little bit of Jeremy talk?
Jeremy talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I read an interesting book recently that my dad actually gave me called Pathogenesis. Pathogenesis by Jonathan Kennedy, subtitled How Germs...
It's a good name for an album.
It is actually a very appealing name in multiple ways. Subtitle is How Germs Made History. So the premise of this book is looking back through the evolution of humanity, both biologically and in terms of society and culture, history, and viewing it not through a lens of human choices or evolutionary factors like Darwinism, but instead by disease and illness and pathogens and pandemics, and how that shaped what we know and understand of history, which was a really interesting and unique sort of perspective on the past, which I found really compelling. And so I just excerpted maybe 4 different interesting little takeaways or notes or stories, and I thought we could just go through them and chit chat about them, and I don't know, see what you think of some of this stuff, because I found it fascinating.
All right.
So, as I said, the book's name is Pathogenesis. I enjoyed it. It's good and sort of breezy read if you like a little bit of a scientific history book. But a few sort of mind-blowing things here. So the first one that I want to start with here is the idea of the real biology of humanity being shaped by very early pathogens and viruses and bacteria. So I'm just going to read an excerpt here, and then we can chit-chat about your reaction. So talking about things called retroviruses. A retrovirus is a specific type of virus that reproduces by inserting a copy of its DNA into the genome of the host cell. But when a retrovirus infects a sperm or egg cell, something remarkable happens. Viral DNA is then passed on to every cell in every subsequent generation. An astonishing 8% of the human genome is made up of such genes. One remarkable example is a gene inherited from a retrovirus infection about 400 million years ago that plays a crucial role in memory formation. The gene does this by coding for tiny protein bubbles that help to move information between neurons in a manner that is similar to the way viruses spread their genetic information from one cell to another. In the laboratory, mice that have this gene removed are unable to form memories. So the idea that humanity can store and recall and form memories, that ability came from a viral infection 400 million years ago. If we didn't get infected by that virus, we wouldn't have that ability.
So this is a mutation.
This is viral DNA that was infected into some primordial ancestor of ours that's been carried down through the genome ever since that infection for hundreds of millions of years. And that without a viral infection, we wouldn't actually be able to store memories.
But that means basically no living life would be able to store any memories, right?
Correct.
Not just humans.
Correct.
And that probably means that if that didn't happen, there might not even be any life, because how can you live without memories?
Well, not like mammalian life, right? Or like aquatic life or something like that. You're much more in a area of like animalistic impulse stuff. Like we're talking about creatures or either like plants and things which just respond from like chemical processes basically, or things like viruses and bacteria which you don't think of as having like wants, but they just like consume and then procreate and divide and that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, memory formation.
But even if it's just like a threat, like if there's a deer, and it goes near a kind of a lake, and there's alligators in the lake, and if it doesn't have the memory of there's things in the lake that can kill me, then it's like, I'll go have a lovely little drink by the lake.
100%.
No more deer.
Interesting. So that is one example of a retrovirus. Here's the other. This is the one that really blew my mind. Another mind-blowing example of a function that human ancestors acquired from retroviruses is the ability to give birth. When animals first evolved, they reproduced by laying eggs, and most creatures in the animal kingdom continue to give birth this way. Then, between 100 million and 200 million years ago, a shrew-like creature developed the capacity to gestate her young inside her own body, which is an extraordinary evolutionary advance because a fetus is much safer growing inside its mother's body. It is only possible because of the placenta, a temporary organ that attaches to the uterus and allows nutrients and oxygen to pass from mother to baby, and carbon dioxide and waste to travel in the other direction, without provoking a devastating response from the mother's immune system. There is nothing like this interface between the placenta and womb anywhere else in our bodies. When geneticists look at the gene responsible for creating it, they realized it was almost identical to those used by retroviruses to produce the proteins that attach to cells they are infecting without triggering an immune response. The scientists concluded that a crucial function of the placenta didn't emerge gradually a result of evolution by natural selection, but was suddenly acquired when a retrovirus inserted its DNA into our ancestors' genome. So, if one of our distant ancestors hadn't been infected by this tiny virus hundreds of millions of years ago, humans would reproduce by laying eggs.
That's insane. That's insanity.
But we wouldn't mind-blowing.
But we wouldn't be here. Like if we were laying eggs, I just don't.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be here though, right? Like
we're talking about a fundamental like branch in the the probability tree in the timeline. Like if it didn't happen, I don't think any of it happens.
That is wild. That's super interesting.
Yeah.
We reflect on this a lot. But it is just so crazy to think that there are so many like these things that I didn't even know. Obviously, like often we focus on like, if the Earth had, this much more oxygen, or this much more gravity or this further away from the sun, then we wouldn't be here. But then it's not only that, it's like if our ancient ancestors didn't have this virus that developed a gene, we also wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't be talking about this like it is, and yet we still just think life is just how it should be.
Yeah,
we're like,
it's all random. It's all chance. It's all like there's so many infinite factors that had to work out in this exact way for it to be the way that it is. But as you say, you go through life not thinking about it.
And not only just like being alive or being able to, talk to you via Skype.
Yeah.
It's like maybe there was one thing in the atmosphere that altered the way we look, and maybe we have, giant balloon heads and tiny little bodies or something, but we're still talking over Skype like we are now. But then that's the normal thing because that's how everyone looks.
Yeah.
I always think like, how we look at it like I don't know, what's a weird insect? I don't know, even like a cockroach. A cockroach goes about its life trying to find, amongst other things, trying to find a mate at some point. So in cockroach life, there are attractive cockroaches. And we look at cockroaches just disgusting. But if you are a cockroach, there are certain cockroaches that have a certain genetic makeup that are appealing to you. And some of the cockroaches going, she's pretty hot, hey? She's a pretty sexy mama over there.
Yeah. I mean, same with like birds, right? Like how many birds do those fucking like mating dances or whatever? And like you're looking at it and the birds and they're doing their little shuffle. And like for some like other bird there, they're like, that's not up to scratch. I'm not interested. Like that.
Yeah. And then they're looking at us like, ugh. Like, what are these disgusting monkeys?
Where are their feathers? Yeah.
Where are all their feathers? They don't even dance.
They don't even dance. I mean, I do dance sort of like an unsuccessful bird of, what do you call it?
Yeah, paradise.
Bird of paradise. So this book covers like ancient, like primordial plagues, Neolithic and like Paleolithic and the Neolithic civilizations, all the way up through like Roman Empire, ancient plagues, through the Dark Ages, all the way up to the present day. So it's quite a sweeping look at the impacts of all of this stuff across time. So I won't delve into all of it, but I do have a few more sort of stops along the way that I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah.
One of them was Roman Empire. So we're fulfilling the cliche of how many times a day do you think about the Roman Empire? That viral trend in more ways than one. But talking about how the fall of so many of those ancient civilizations was in no small part due to pathogens and immunity. The idea of you having grown up in a place, and if you've got to adulthood in the early, millennia of society, if you got to adulthood, you have immunity to whatever fucked up plague was around at that moment, whether it's, Black Plague or malaria or, cholera or any of these other sort of problems floating around. And that's why, like, so many kids died so young. But if you got to adulthood, you had some sort of built-in immunity. But it was localized to that region. So much of the power dynamics of armies and of large-scale early war was defined by traveling armies ending up in new locations where they didn't have any innate resistance to the pandemic or the flus or the viruses that were in that area, and just dying in their hundreds, in their thousands, because they don't have the herd immunity to the local mix of viruses and things, which I thought was a very interesting way to re-examine history. But specifically things like the Roman Empire, just to summarize sort of here what I just said. So a series of pandemics caused immense damage and played a crucial role in weakening the Roman Empire, not just in absolute terms, but also relative to the neighboring barbarians. This is because although the term barbarian is problematic as it lumps together an incredibly diverse set of communities into one indistinguishable and supposedly inferior mass, all of these groups tended to have one thing in common. They lived in much less populated and less connected societies than the Romans. As a result, pandemics tended to cause far more devastation to the Romans than to barbarian societies. The differential impact of infectious diseases is a key factor in the political dynamics of the Roman Empire from the mid-2nd century until the fall of Constantinople to the Ottomans in 1453. Barbarian armies took advantage of the opportunity afforded by epidemics, invading deep into the Roman territory, besieging Aquileia and almost reaching Athens. So a lot of these historical conflicts that we think of as a question of military might or of a question of like technological superiority can often be better explained by a biological weakness of the traveling armies to the places that they're going to.
Wow. Isn't it crazy that these, like the Roman Empire and ancient Greece, they were like the kings of the world, and now they're just kind of small little places, I just find it fascinating they can go from like ruling the world to just like a little kind of old village kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, literally the hub of humanity has moved several times in, the past 2,000 years. You have to wonder whether America and currently China and that kind of thing, where we are in 1,000 years' time, whether they're still seen as the hub of it.
Yeah. Well, you can't imagine, and even in the Middle East, like Iran was like the birthplace of mathematics and science. It was like this, the world leading area of the world in scientific, discovery and revolution, and now they've kind of almost turned their back on that. It seems like in favor of religion.
Well, it's a very interesting thing that you teed me up for then, because my next topic of discussion is Christianity. So here's a little morsel for you. How do you explain the sudden transformation of Christianity from a marginal Jewish sect to a popular religion? The American sociologist Rodney Stark argues that infectious diseases are a crucial part of the story. The Christian faith skyrocketed because it provided a more appealing and assuring guide to life and death than paganism, during the devastating pandemics that struck the Roman Empire in the 2nd and 3rd centuries. In fact, he goes so far as to say that if it wasn't for the Antonine and Cyprianic plagues, Christianity might never have become so dominant a faith. So one major difference between the old and new faith was the issue of what happens when we die. Jesus promised everlasting life in paradise, whereas pagans believed in an unattractive existence in the underworld. Then there was the question of why pandemics occurred. The Greco-Roman gods were capricious, angry, indifferent to human suffering, and sometimes downright cruel. Remember, the Romans believed that Apollo conjured up a plague that killed 7 million people to punish the transgressions of a few light-fingered legionaries in the middle of the 2nd century. In this belief system, the best way to save oneself from Apollo's wrath was to try and deflect his anger by making a sacrifice or some other form of offering. In contrast, Jesus' message that hardship brought redemption was much more reassuring in the face of a recurring devastation of plagues. It offered hope and meaning by explicitly promising a better life in the next world for those who are suffering on earth. Christianity, in this argument, would not have become successful if it wasn't for the context of the world in which it was suddenly skyrocketing in popularity, which was epidemics, plague, and death.
That's fascinating. It's funny that, like, we're talking about things that people are saying are true. Like, this is the truth of the universe. But it seems that, like, okay, you can just make it more appealing and then that will become the true thing that everyone believes.
Yeah. And it speaks, I think, to humanity's need for explanation, right? Or for storytelling or for a place in the world, right? The willingness to believe in something that was easier or better because of the circumstances that we were in, right? We're leaving behind old beliefs because I would prefer that this suffering wasn't meaningless or that there was good things to come. Very revealing as to this sort of fallibility of human existence, belief, life, understanding.
It's entirely revealing, and like even in the Muslim world, like promise of 72 virgins.
Yeah,
I mean, when you go to the afterlife, if you're a martyr, I mean, this just like it clearly shows where our heads were at that time. Like the greatest thing that you can imagine for yourself in the afterlife is 72 young women who haven't had sex yet.
Yeah.
I mean, this is ancient.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing, we won't go into it, but like, I think like, especially with things like jihadism coming up again now, once again, I think people don't or aren't willing to attribute the role that religion actually plays in our day-to-day life and in terms of conflict and all those things. I mean, I won't go into it because I'll just start ranting, but it is fascinating how it seems once you remove yourself from it or create some distance from it, like I did, you really can see it for, I don't know, I guess maybe I have my own bias as well, but you kind of see it for what it is, and you see it as a reflection of us.
Of the needs,
people say that we are made in God's image, but God is made in our image.
Yeah.
Historically.
It's interesting as well because
it's fascinating.
You think about that time, like imagine 2,000 years ago. Like I won't go into it that much, but there's plenty of discussion about the way that early cultures understood disease, what they thought caused these things, like yellow fever or that kind of stuff. People didn't believe, for instance, that it could be transmitted through water, through like fecal matter in the water, and people were drinking water with shit in it and then getting infectious diseases, and that was seen as ridiculous. And similarly, like attributing these things to gods and to external things, because we didn't have the understanding of the world that we now have today. So when you think about the rise of things like Christianity, where your choice is either there's some unknowable God doing horrible things to me, or I can be optimistic. I can hope for something better. I can suffer through this knowing that happiness is coming at the end of it. It's actually makes me feel really empathetic towards that evolution, because you understand it. If that's the world you're living in, where it's all completely above you, you have no hope of understanding anything. why wouldn't you pick the one that gives you something, right? Something to look forward to. I find it quite touching in that context.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Like it makes sense. It makes sense. I was watching a sunset a week or so ago, and it was one of those sunsets where you're looking over the ocean and you can literally see the sun dipping below the horizon.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, like, if you are a medieval person or someone who was born 1,000 years ago, didn't have understanding that this was a giant spherical ball
it's
of
a star,
of
right? In
fire,
millions of kilometers away. Yeah.
millions of miles away. I would think that it is a god or something. It was like, okay, well, that's just the god. It has to be the god. When I go outside and I get sun on my skin, I feel better. You would make all these connections that would make perfect sense if you don't have the scientific understanding. And even I always think about like the idea of the connection between sex and giving birth. Like, when did that understanding? Because that's quite a leap.
Interesting.
You can be like, when I have sex, and then there's a child that comes. I'm not sure. It's kind of like a lot of cognitive processes need to happen for you to make a connection between. I had sex 9 months ago, and then as a child, like I'm assuming they're not related. You're just doing it because it's an impulse. Dogs when they have. When they have sex, they're just doing it to fulfill, some sort of primal urge that they have. They're not thinking,
I'm ready to have a child
kid right now. I can have a litter. They're just thinking, I'm just going to do this thing. And then the dogs, the female dogs are walking around going, what the fuck is happening to me? Where did this come from?
Yeah.
But people back then, I mean, I think
probably the first clue was when the redheaded child popped out from the redheaded hookup. And then they're like, oh, okay, I do see it here. Because I've got black hair. But this was very much you, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think there's been examples of like tribes in Africa that still believe that pregnancy comes from females washing themselves in a certain body of water.
Oh.
They think if they go into this body of water, they will get pregnant. And they haven't had, the understanding that it comes from, intercourse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know why
Fascinating.
I just use intercourse then.
Well,
I was being more scientific, you see.
I bought it. I bought it until you started doubting yourself.
Yeah.
I got one more touch point here, which is going to be ill-served by a very brief summary in what is actually probably one of the longer chapters in the book. But I'll raise the point here and leave it for people to go and read, because I do encourage people to check out this book. But this is the connection between slavery and epidemiology. So there's plenty of examples across the book talking about Africa, talking about Spanish invasion, talking about all these kind of things. But here's one example. So when Columbus set foot on Hispaniola, he inadvertently found some of the most fertile land on the planet and a warm, humid climate that was perfect for growing sugarcane. His second voyage in 1493 brought sugarcane plants to the Caribbean. At first, the conquistadors tried to use Native Americans to work the land, but the indigenous population was devastated by Old World pathogens. On Columbus's third voyage to the Caribbean in 1498, he advocated importing Africans who were already working in sugar plantations in Atlantic outposts like Madeira and the Canary Islands. Soon afterwards, the transatlantic slave trade began. Within 25 years, there were more enslaved Africans than indigenous people in Hispaniola. By the middle of the 16th century, the indigenous population had totally disappeared. As West Africa was connected to Europe and Asia by overland and sea routes, the local population had been exposed to Old World pathogens and fared much better. So, the early conquistadors' decision to use enslaved Africans on their sugar plantations had unexpected but momentous consequences. It inadvertently set the whole of the American tropics on an inescapable path towards racialized slavery, because the nascent transatlantic slave trade carried not only people, but also some of the mosquitoes and microbes that made West Africa a deadly place for Europeans. So basically, The arrival of West African pathogens turned the Caribbean into a white man's grave. Yellow fever epidemics rather than malaria were the major killer of Europeans, but the basic outcome was the same. Almost everyone who had grown up in West Africa would have been exposed to these diseases and acquired lifelong immunity, whereas new settlers from Europe hadn't developed any tolerance and died in droves. As a result, African labor became the economically rational option for plantation owners.
Wow.
There is so much more in this chapter and in this book about this, but the idea that if you're thinking in completely immoral financial terms, the decision was, do we import Europeans to come and work on our plantations, or can we find another workforce? And Europeans would come and just die because they couldn't survive with the local pathogens, and West Africans could. And as a result, slave trade.
Wow.
Again, it just completely recontextualizes so much about the way you think about history. I don't know if you have much more to say on that. I think I can leave it there, but it is a great book, Pathogenesis. I do recommend it if this has piqued your interest. It's really fascinating.
Yeah. Well, actually, I just saw that Spotify has audiobooks now. I don't know if you've seen this, and they've got like everything. And so I might just add this to my audiobook list.
Yeah, see if you can give it a listen.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating.
It's really, it covers a lot of stuff that I think will be of interest to you.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Well, if you've enjoyed this kind of discussion, that's very great to hear. And possibly you'd also find enjoyment from previous episodes we've made. You can find plenty in our feed. You can go back and pick one at random. I promise it's going to be good, maybe. There's also ways you can keep in touch with us. If you have thoughts about what we've talked about or suggestions for what we should talk about, please send us an email to deepthought@gmail.com. Flick us a message on your social media platform of choice. We're on Facebook, we're on Insta. Jump onto the old Spotify if you want to listen to us there. Rate us 5 stars, or some of our Christmas songs will be there. So go have a listen. It's that time of year. And otherwise, just try and live a good life. Wash yourself with soap and don't drink water full of shit.
Good advice.
Hey, Michael, how about a little bit of a rec engine?
Yeah.
I'll get the keys. Welcome to Deep Thought's recommendation engine. Nice. Been a little while since a rec engine. Got a couple of.
A long while.
Got a couple sitting here, but why don't you start things off, Mike?
Yeah, I got some from a while back here. This is one maybe you've watched, but did you see the Smartless on the Road doc?
No, I didn't. I heard of it, I think.
It's the Smartless pod guys, Will Arnett, Jason Bateman, and Sean Hayes. They have a podcast. It's pretty big, but they've done like a 6-part, basically tour diary kind of thing. Now I can find these guys kind of annoying. Like their banter, I like to a limit, and then I don't. But this was well. First of all, this was shot in black and white for seemingly no reason.
Really, the whole thing.
The whole thing's in black and white.
Because I feel like I saw the trailer and I thought that was like a trailer choice, but the whole show, wow.
Whole show. Okay.
It does say a lot, sort of, about the podcast, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, anytime I can get on board with the black and white film. If it's like kind of serves the film, I kind of think it's probably going to be better in color. But you're in charge. Do whatever you want for a fucking comedy podcast tour diary.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. But I got to say, I loved this a lot. I think they kind of let you in to a point which I didn't expect. They get deep. They have some very real conversations. They get kind of emotional. They also have like just behind the scenes, they're joshing around, and I think it's good quality bants.
Yeah,
it's they have a great rapport. I don't know. I think that Sean Hayes doesn't quite belong, or can't really kind of keep up. But he actually brings a lot of sweetness to the trio.
Dynamic, yeah. I think you do need sort of an outsider voice sometimes. It's a bit that way in the pod as well, where you know that Arnett and Bateman have like 30 years or 20 years plus of camaraderie.
He's kind of the punching bag, Sean Hayes, but he offers like I said, like a bit of sweetness.
Yeah, different perspective
to them all, and it was just cool. I really like, I really like seeing the goings ons and the kind of intricate practical details of things, like when a band goes on tour, or what happens in the green room. Like, I'm more interested in that in some ways than the actual thing that they're putting out. And I think this was, it's got kind of snippets of their live shows with Will Ferrell and I think there's Bradley Cooper or whatever. But I don't know. It's just kind of cool to see like a little bit of the podcast and then what's going on behind the scenes. So I won't say too much about it, but I would check it out. Smartless on the Road.
Did you say it's a 6-part series?
I think it's a 6-part or 5-part.
How long is each part?
Maybe 40 to 50 minutes.
Wow. Okay. Jeez.
Yeah.
Quite hefty. It's good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. Smartless on the Road.
I can't remember if I said on pod previously or if it was just to you directly, but I watched Michelle Wolf's most recent Netflix specials. And they are I watched all 3 of them back to back. They're like 20 minutes each. Really enjoyable, sharp, fast comedy. Forgive me if I did say it previously, so maybe I won't dwell on it too much. You haven't checked it out yet?
No.
There's a couple of great jokes in there that I think you'll really like, but I won't spoil them. What I will talk about is Pete Holmes' special, I Am Not For Everyone. Have you watched I'm Not For Everyone?
I watched it pretty recently, actually.
Yeah. I think it only came out like a week ago. I really enjoyed that. I thought that had some really fun bits in it. I think his sort of ending run there where he talks about religion and that kind of stuff was really kind of interesting. And I thought it was a good mix of sort of the truth that you get from his podcast vibe, but with like good stand-up premises and jokes as well. And he's clearly having a ball. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, he's one of these guys that I've just been a huge fan of for ages now because of the pod and because of his show Crashing. But then I realized I hadn't actually seen any of his stand-up. I'd seen like snippets on TikTok, Instagram, whatever.
Yeah.
And I liked it. I mean, I didn't find myself like laughing out loud as much, as I have with other specials, but like I really enjoy his depth and how he will go. He thinks about things very deeply. He's a very thoughtful guy.
Yeah.
I like how he talks about, religion and even the observational stuff about his family and stuff. And I wasn't like bending over.
It doesn't blow you away.
Like kind of rolling around. But like his podcast, I just like what he talks about.
Yeah.
And he's just a very likable guy.
He's a very nice guy. Yeah, I thought his sort of best premises towards the end there was talking about the comparison between atheism and religion, just to circle back to where we were earlier, and saying how in religious terms, you believe that you come from God and you come from nothing and then return to your maker afterwards. And if you're an atheist, you believe you came from nothing and return to nothing afterwards, which is the exact same fucking thing. That's a great observation. Yeah. That is really clever, funny, good quality material. I had a good time with it.
No, I love old Holmesy.
How much of a temptation do you think there was if you're Pete Holmes' parents to name your kid Sherlock? Like, it's got to come up. If your surname's Holmes, it needs to at least be a conversation.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Just
sorry,
putting it out there.
Yeah. If you hate your kid, maybe. Imagine a Sherlock these days.
Yeah,
Sherlock. You can't even abbreviate it.
You can. If you'd played my video games, you'd know that they go with Sherry in the video game.
Sherry. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sherry.
Yeah.
Not great for a man. I'll throw in a special as well. One of my favorite comedians, Joe List. He's got a special called Enough for Everybody. He's got it up on YouTube. He's a kind of just a classic classic comedian, tells a lot of stories, has some great observations. He is also the co-host of my favorite podcast, Tuesdays with Stories. But I just think he doesn't get enough credit, and he's just a very funny dude. Joe List.
I don't know that I would recognize him in a lineup. I don't think I've ever really encountered him, so I'll have to have a look.
No, he's one of those great comedians that he can't market himself on social media, and he doesn't have a show, and he's kind of in no man's land in terms of comedy, but he's just incredibly funny.
Okay, I'll have to have a look. It's been very comedy focused, but I'm going to hard pivot here because I have been listening a lot to Sufjan's new album, Javelin. Boy, I love that album. I mean, I was in the bag anyway, but the last one that he put out in 2020, The Ascension, I was a little bit lukewarm on. It didn't really stick with me. But this is a real return to form. And the context in which it was released was also very notable because sadly he both has a debilitating nerve disease called Guillain-Barré syndrome, in which he lost the ability to walk and has been in a wheelchair and recovering for several months, so unable to promote the album that he just put out. And in addition, 6 months ago, his longtime partner died very young. And that was the first time that he'd publicly come out because he shared a photo and it was of a guy that he had been in a relationship with. After years of speculation, publicly came out by announcing his partner's death, which is crushing. And this is an album about that process, and it's heartbreaking and beautiful and sweet and everything that I was hoping for.
Yeah, he's kind of returning to his Carrion Lowell sound, slightly after the Ascension deviation. I really liked the Ascension, though.
I like the Ascension's vibes, but it didn't. I don't know. It was a little bit overstuffed for me.
I described the Ascension when it first came out, and this might be a byproduct of being stuck in lockdown and just wanting to hang my hat on to anything.
Yeah.
But I described the Ascension as Sufjan's In Rainbows, and I remember when I started saying that, people were going, "No, it's not that good. It's not that good." And I think in time, it's probably a bit ambitious to call it his In Rainbows, but it's got Sugar, it's got Video
Sugar
Game.
is amazing.
I mean,
Video Games. Yeah. Oh, there's bangers in there. Yeah.
Great pop songs, bangers. But yeah, no, I do love this one as well.
Make Me an Offer You Cannot Refuse. Great way to start the album. Towards the end, loses it a little bit for me. But anyway, the one that actually has been sticking with me in terms of an analog here is the All Delighted People EP, which I don't know if you heard, but back in 2012 when he put out Age of Odds, which I would point to as the In Rainbows equivalent, where he came out of nowhere with a real zag, I suppose, away from his old sound and did something new. The week before that came out, he released an EP of older style songs that didn't fit the new vibe, and that has a lot of familiarity or a lot of echoes, I think, in Javelin, which has a lot of the sort of finger plucked banjo aesthetic as well as some of the newer vibes. But it's on loop. It was always going to be on loop, but this time I think it really will stand up a little bit more strongly than Ascension has for me.
Great album. I need to put it back in my rotation because I was hammering it when it first came out and then it just kind of dropped off.
Yeah.
I got one more rec for you.
Please. I'm eager.
And this one's pretty easily digestible.
Okay. Oh,
Yakult. It's Yakult. Yakult is one of those things.
You said Yakult 6 times in the past 10 seconds.
You try Yakult 7 when you're a young kid and you're like, oh, that's a weird, interesting flavor. And then it kind of grows on you as you grow up. And here in Asia, Yakult is massive. I mean, it's a Japanese brand.
Would you say there's a bit of a cult around it?
Yeah.
We can stop there. We're not gonna surpass cult. Yeah. Oh god.